In 2022, the United States and its Western allies did something that quietly terrified governments all over the world. With nothing more than a few keystrokes, they froze around $300 billion of Russia's money Russia believed was safely its own. Now, wait a second. How can a group of countries just switch off another country's money? Doesn't Russia keep its own money? Here's the thing. That money wasn't sitting in a vault in Moscow. It was sitting inside the Western financial system. So they didn't have to take anything. They just locked the door. No invasion, no army, just switched off. And every other country watching had the same chilling thought. If they can do this to Russia, they can do it to us. That fear lit a fuse. Today, a bloc of the world's biggest non-Western economies, called BRICS, is openly trying to break free from the US dollar. But how does simply holding dollars give the West this kind of power? And can BRICS actually break it? Let's break it down, step by step. So let's answer that first question, because it's the key to everything. When a country earns hundreds of billions selling oil, gas, or goods, it doesn't stuff all that cash into a giant vault back home. Money sitting in a vault does nothing. It just gathers dust. So countries do what any smart saver does. They put that money to work. They park it in the safest things they can find, mostly foreign government bonds and bank accounts abroad, where it stays safe and earns a little interest. But that means a country's savings don't really live inside its own borders. They live as entries inside the Western financial system, the one the United States and its allies control. Now, why dollars? Why not just save in your own currency? Because for decades, the dollar has been the world's money. When Japan buys oil, when Germany buys computer chips, when two companies on opposite sides of the planet trade, they mostly do it in dollars. In fact, even today, the dollar is used in nearly 90% of all currency trades and makes up about 57% of the savings the world's central banks hold. So if you're a country, you need dollars to trade, to save, to pay your debts. Everyone does. And that need is exactly where the power comes from. And here's the part that changed everything. Because the whole world runs on dollars, and those dollars flow through banks and systems the US oversees, America ended up holding a hidden lever over the entire global economy. Think of it this way. The dollar isn't just money. It's also the plumbing that money flows through. And the US controls the plumbing. Most international payments pass through a messaging network called SWIFT and through American banks. If the US decides a country is off limits, it can cut it out, block its banks, freeze its accounts, and suddenly that nation can't pay for imports or get paid for exports. That's exactly what happened to Russia in 2022. And here's the detail that really matters. Russia had actually seen this coming. For years, it had been moving its money out of the dollar into euros and gold, and it still got frozen. Because the problem was never just the dollar. It was the entire Western system the dollar sits at the center of. That was the wake-up call. If it could happen to Russia, one of the biggest economies on Earth, it could happen to anyone who fell out of favor with the West. So who exactly are these countries trying to break the dollar's grip? Here's the funny part. The name wasn't invented by any of them. Back in 2001, a British economist at the American bank Goldman Sachs coined the term BRIC, a catchy label for four economies he expected to boom: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. At first, it was only that, a label, But those countries liked the idea of teaming up. In 2009, they held their first summit, and a year later, South Africa joined, turning BRIC into BRICS. For years, it was just those five, but lately, the club has grown fast. Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the UAE, and in 2025, Indonesia have all joined, with more waiting at the door. And this is the part people underestimate. Add it all up, and BRICS now covers nearly half the world's population. Measured by what their money can actually buy at home, economists call it purchasing power, these countries now produce a bigger share of the world's output than the G7, the club of wealthy Western nations. In raw dollar terms, the West is still ahead, but the gap closes every year. And they're not just talking. Back in 2014, BRICS built its own bank, the New Development Bank, in Shanghai, a direct alternative to the Western-run World Bank and IMF, lending without the strings the West usually attaches. So this isn't a fringe group. It's a rising bloc that feels the global rules. The dollar, the big banks, the IMF were written by the US and Europe after World War II in the West's favor. And the 2022 freeze proved it. BRICS is a counterweight, a group saying the world shouldn't run on just one country's currency and one country's rules. And their number one target? The dollar. But here's something crucial. BRICS is not one voice. Inside the bloc, everyone wants something different. China is the engine, by far the biggest economy, and the one that gains the most if the world leans on its currency instead of the dollar. Russia is the most desperate. After 2022, escaping the dollar isn't a strategy for Moscow. It's survival. And India is the reluctant one. Happy to trade in rupees, but also a close partner of the United States, with no interest in simply handing power to its rival, China. Keep this in mind, because these very tensions are what make breaking the dollar so hard. So what's the actual plan to break free? It comes down to three real moves, and one that's mostly a myth. Move 1. Trade in their own currencies. Instead of putting dollars in the middle, why not just pay each other directly? And this is already happening, at scale. Today, over 90% of trade between China and Russia is settled in yuan and rubles, not dollars. India has bought Russian oil in rupees. Every one of those deals skips the dollar entirely. Move 2. Build their own plumbing. Remember SWIFT, the network the West can weaponize? BRICS countries are building alternatives. China has its own system, called CIPS. Russia built one after 2014. And the bloc is developing a shared network called BRICS Pay, designed to move money between them without ever touching the Western system. Move 3. Buy gold. Gold is the one form of money nobody can freeze with a keystroke. No country controls it. So central banks have been buying it at the fastest pace in over 70 years, more than 1,000 tons a year, 3 years running. A quiet insurance policy against the dollar. And the fourth thing, the famous BRICS currency, a single new money to rival the dollar? You've seen the headlines, but here's the honest truth. It doesn't exist, and it isn't really being built. In 2025, Brazil, holding the group's presidency, quietly shelved the idea. Why? That's where the cracks show. So if the plan is real, why is the dollar still on top? Because breaking free is far harder than it sounds, for 3 big reasons. First, they don't fully trust each other. Would you keep your national savings in Chinese yuan, a currency Beijing can control and restrict? India, which sees China as a rival, certainly doesn't. It's hard to build a united front when the members are competitors. Second, nobody agrees who'd be in charge. A shared currency would need one central bank calling the shots, and since China is by far the biggest economy, it would dominate. The others don't want to swap dependence on America for dependence on Beijing. Third, the dollar is just everywhere. Still nearly 90% of currency trades. Still about 57% of global reserves. The yuan, despite China's size, is only a tiny slice. You don't replace something that deeply woven into the world overnight. That's why, for all the headlines, real progress has been slow, and why even Saudi Arabia, invited to join BRICS, has quietly declined to fully commit, hedging its bets to keep America close. So, is the dollar dying? The honest answer, no, not anytime soon. But something real is happening. The world isn't flipping from the dollar to a single new currency. Instead, it's slowly fragmenting from one dominant money into a messier, multi-currency world, where more and more trade quietly happens around the dollar instead of through it. Economists have a name for this slow drift: de-dollarization. It won't be a sudden collapse. It'll look like what we're already seeing: a little less oil sold in dollars, a few more deals in yuan or rupees, central banks holding a bit more gold and a few fewer dollars, new payment systems going live, chipping away year by year. The dollar's throne isn't being knocked over. It's slowly being surrounded. So why should any of this matter to you, wherever you live? Because the dollar's dominance is one of the quiet forces behind your daily life. It's part of why America can borrow almost endlessly, why sanctions are such a powerful weapon, and why a decision made in Washington can ripple into prices, currencies, and interest rates on the other side of the planet. If that dominance slowly fades, the effects reach everyone. The price of oil, the value of your own currency, even how much your government pays to borrow. The dollar era we grew up in isn't ending with a bang. It's ending with a slow, quiet drift toward a more divided financial world. And we're all living through the shift in real time. So next time you see a headline screaming the end of the dollar, you'll know the real story. Not a sudden death, but a slow surrounding. Whether BRICS can finish the job? That's the trillion-dollar question of our generation. And honestly, that's where I want to hear from you. Do you think the dollar will still rule the world 20 years from now? Or is its time quietly running out? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, and I really want to know what you think. If this finally made those end of the dollar headlines make sense, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Economics explained simply, one story at a time. So if you got something out of it, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more than you'd think. And subscribe so the next story finds you. I'll see you in the next one.